Hi, I'm Judy, and I'm here to tell you about my new book from C&T Publishing, Quilts for Scrap Lovers. There's 16 projects, and the title is 16 Projects Start with Simple Squares. This book is actually a must-have for anybody who does quilting, sewing garments, sewing bags, or anything else that leaves you with odd-shaped scraps. When you have odd-shaped scraps, they don't lend themselves to strip quilting. This is the only book on the market today that takes scrap quilting from the perspective of using your scraps as they actually are, without having to square them up first, without having to cut them up into strips. The way that that's done is with a set of companion tools. The tools are simply a 3.5, a 4.5, and a 5.5 inch square. One of the quilt squares that is in the book, I'm going to demonstrate here for you today. Many of the blocks in this book are made with similar techniques with using these squares. Now, for demonstration purposes, I have two new pieces of fabric because I need to demonstrate it this way for you. But this is what you would do with your scraps. You take two contrasting pieces out of your scrap bin. So I have two darks and two lighter pieces, okay? And I iron them out. Then I'm going to take my 5.5 inch template. Now these are the fast to cut templates that are made by C&T Publishing. The fast to cut templates by C&T Publishing include a 5.5 inch square. The 5.5 inch square is not manufactured widely at all. And the price on these is very reasonable for all three templates. And it's one of the only places where you're going to find a 5.5 inch square. Many pieces of fabric are marketed as 5 inch squares, but a 5.5 inch square is so much more useful, and as well as the 4.5 inch square. So you're going to take that 5.5 inch square and you're going to put it down on the two darks and two lights that you have. Now you've ironed them out, they come out of your scrap bin, and you're just going to lay that 5.5 inch square right down on top of your scraps. Now it helps to have sandpaper grips on the back or my maker tape, and we also have a video about my maker tape from C&T Publishing that can be used on the back of these squares, and it works absolutely beautifully to keep your templates from slipping. Okay, so now we're going to take this off of the 5.5 inch squares. There's 4 of them here. Remember, we had 2 lights and we have 2 darks. Then you're going to take the 3.5 inch and you're going to put the 3.5 inch template back right down on top of there, right in that right hand corner. And now I want to make a comment about the fact that it doesn't matter whether these are right sides together, wrong sides together, so it's mistake proof. You can have the right sides all facing up or the wrong sides all facing up, or a combination of the two. So you're going to put that 3.5 inch square into the corner and you're going to cut right to the edge of that 3.5 inch square. And if you're afraid that you're going to overshoot, just rock your rotary cutter forward slightly, okay? Then I'm going to take the 5.5 inch square and I'm going to put it back, and I'm going to snug it up against that 3.5 inch one, remove the 3.5 inch square, and cut. Now, for this block, that is the only cutting that you're going to do. You're done. You're done with the cutting. Now, how many of us have known that a baby was coming for 9 months and you waited till the week before the baby was born to get the quilt done? A lot of us have done that. So this one quilt, this is called Treasure Box in the book. This quilt will go together very quickly and be just beautiful when it's done. Because one night you're going to spend ironing and cutting, and then the next night you're going to chain piece. So what you're going to chain piece is, you're going to chain piece this to this. Now you're going to make a 1/4 inch seam with that. This rectangle to this square, this rectangle to this, and this rectangle to this. Now you've got a 1/4 inch seam there. So when you add these rectangles, you're only going to trim off that tiny little piece. So not only are you going to be using up odd-shaped scraps that you never thought you were going to use up again, but you're not wasting anything either. So now you're going to put this rectangle on here, this here, and this here. And that's how quickly that beautiful block goes together. Now likewise, there's many blocks in this book that go together like that, in that manner. There are beautiful quilts using just these 3 sizes. Now the block that I just demonstrated here is this quilt right here. Another quilt that I love to show people because you are using many, many pieces of fabric from all over the spectrum is this one here. You've got a butterfly fabric here, you've got a houndstooth fabric here, and you've got Asian parasols here. Now how many quilts could you do that in where you would be just carefree using your scraps? And the reason that these all work well together is all explained in the first chapter. It talks about those oddball fabrics that you have trouble finding a use for and how well you can make them go together. So this book really is a must-have for the person with a lot of leftover scraps in their sewing room.